You should not be here." The words cut through the darkness like a blade, sharp and final. Kira froze, her hand still extended toward the massive gray wolf lying in the abandoned den, its silver eyes watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Blood matted its fur, dark and wet, pooling beneath its flank where someone, had torn through flesh and muscle. The wolf's lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed to kill, and a growl rumbled from deep within its chest, a warning that would have sent any sensible person running. But Kira had stopped being sensible the moment she heard its pained whimper echoing through the forbidden forest, the sound reaching something deep inside her that she did not even know existed. "I know," she whispered back, her voice barely audible over the wind howling through the trees outside. "I should not be here. You should not be here. But here we are." The growl intensified, vibrating through the air, through the ground, through her very bones. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to turn around and pretend she had never ventured past the boundary stones that marked where Crescent Moonpack territory ended and the wild lands began. But something stronger than instinct, stronger than fear, kept her rooted in place. The wolf's eyes, those impossibly silver eyes, held hers, and for a moment that stretched into eternity, Kira saw something that made her heart stutter. Pain. Not just physical pain from the wound that would likely kill it by morning, but something deeper, something that mirrored the ache she carried every single day of her invisible existence. She had always been the girl no one noticed, the Omega without a wolf, the defect in a pack that prized strength above all else. 23 years of being overlooked, dismissed, pitied in the worst possible way, the kind of pity that came with barely concealed disgust. Her parents had stopped making excuses for her after her 18th birthday came, and went without a transformation. Her younger sister shifted at 16, a beautiful russet wolf that made their mother weep with pride, and Kira had smiled and clapped, and felt something inside her wither and die. The pack meetings where wolves ran together under the full moon became torture sessions where she stood at the edge of the clearing, always at the edge, watching others experience the freedom she would never know. Marcus, the beta's son, who had once smiled at her in the market, had laughed when someone suggested he ask her to the harvest festival. Data wolfless Omega? I would rather take a human. The words had not even been meant cruelly, just stating an obvious fact, which somehow made them worse. "I will not hurt you," Kira said softly, lowering herself to her knees slowly, making herself smaller, less threatening. The absurdity of that thought almost made her laugh. Her, threatening to a wolf easily 3 times her size, a creature that could end her life with a single snap of those powerful jaws. But she kept her movements careful, deliberate, reaching into the canvas bag she had grabbed before running into the forest. The wolf's growl never stopped, a continuous rumble of warning and pain, and something that sounded almost like pleading. "I brought supplies, bandages, antiseptic. I know it will hurt, but that wound will get infected if it is not cleaned." She pulled out the stolen medical kit, the one she had taken from the pack infirmary when no one was watching, when they were all distracted by the announcement that had sent shockwaves through their quiet territory. The Alpha King himself would be hosting the unification ceremony in 3 weeks, and every unmated female of age from every pack in the 4 kingdoms was required to attend. Required. As if any of them had a choice when the most powerful alpha in living memory issued a summons. The wolf's growl changed pitch, becoming almost questioning, and Kira found herself talking, the words spilling out like water from a cracked vessel. "They are sending me too. Can you believe that? Me, the wolfless failure, attending a ceremony where the Alpha King will choose his Queen Luna. Alpha Catherine thinks it will be amusing, I suppose. Or perhaps she just wants every female body present to make our pack look stronger. Either way, I will be there, serving drinks probably, watching everyone else compete for something I could never have." She uncapped the antiseptic, the sharp, chemical smell making the wolf's nose twitch. Not that I want it. I have heard the stories about King Dominic Ashford. They say he killed his own father to take the throne. They say he once destroyed an entire pack for disrespecting his authority, left nothing but ashes and bones. They say he has never smiled, not once, that his heart is made of ice and stone and darkness. The wolf's silver eyes never left hers as she inched closer, close enough now to feel the heat radiating from its massive body, close enough to smell blood and earth and something else, something wild and intoxicating that made her head spin. They say a lot of things, Kira continued, her hand finally making contact with the wolf's fur, her fingers sinking into the thick coat matted with blood and dirt. The growl stopped. Just stopped. Cut off mid-rumble as if someone had flipped a switch, and the wolf's entire body went still beneath her touch. For a heartbeat, 2, 3, neither of them moved. Then slowly, slowly she almost did not notice at first. The wolf's head lowered, its muzzle coming to rest near her knee, its breathing evening out into something that sounded almost like a sigh. "There we go," she whispered, blinking back tears that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. "There we go. I have got you now. I will not let you die alone in this forgotten place. I will not let you become another thing this world throws away." Her hands worked quickly then, cleaning the wound with efficiency. Born from years of caring for herself since no one else would, stitching torn flesh with needle and thread, while the wolf lay docile beneath her ministrations, only occasionally flinching when she touched a particularly damaged area. The injury was worse than she had initially thought. 3 deep gashes that spoke of claws, of another wolf, of a fight this creature had barely survived. "Who did this to you?" Kira asked, knowing she would receive no answer but needing to voice the question. "Anyway, what were you fighting, or running from?" She wrapped clean bandages around the wolf's torso, securing them as tightly as she dared, her fingers brushing against muscle and bone, and the steady thump of a heartbeat that seemed too strong, too vital, for a dying creature. When she finished, she sat back on her heels, exhausted despite having done so little, drained in a way that had nothing to do with physical effort, and everything to do with the strange energy that seemed to pulse between her and this impossible wolf. "I will come back tomorrow," she promised, gathering her supplies. "I will bring food and fresh bandages and check on you. If you survive the night, that is." The wolf's eyes tracked her as she stood, as she backed toward the den's entrance, reluctance heavy in her chest like a stone. She did not want to leave. The realization struck her with surprising force. She did not want to leave this creature who had shown her more trust in one night than her own pack had in 23 years. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and secret visits. Kira would finish her duties at the pack house, the endless cooking and cleaning and serving that filled her days with mindless routine, and then she would slip away into the forbidden forest with food hidden in her pockets and medical supplies tucked under her cloak. The wolf healed with supernatural speed, the gashes closing and scarring over in days rather than weeks, its strength returning until it could stand and walk and even run short distances. But it never left the den. Every evening when Kira arrived, she would find it waiting, those silver eyes finding hers the moment she stepped through the entrance, its tail giving a subtle wag that made her heart clench with emotions she had no name for. She talked to it constantly, about everything and nothing, about her life and her fears and her dreams that felt increasingly foolish as the unification ceremony drew closer. The wolf listened with an attention no human had ever given her, its gaze never wavering, its presence a comfort that soothed wounds she had not realized still bled. "They are making me go as a servant," Kira told the wolf on the 13th night, her fingers running through its now clean fur, marveling at how soft it was, like silk and smoke. Alpha Catherine announced it. "This morning. All the ranked females will attend as potential candidates for Queen Luna, and I will attend to serve them, to make sure their dresses are perfect, and their hair is arranged, and their wine glasses are never empty. To be invisible while they shine." She laughed, a sound without humor. "At least I am practiced at being invisible. I have been perfecting that skill my entire life." The wolf made a sound low in its throat, not quite a growl, but something more complex, and pushed its massive head under her hand, demanding attention. She obliged, scratching behind its ears in the spot she had discovered made its back leg twitch. "I will miss you," she admitted quietly. "Is that insane? Missing a wolf I have known for 2 weeks? A wolf that should have killed me on sight? But I will. I will miss having someone who actually seems to care whether I exist or not." The wolf's response was to roll onto its back, exposing its vulnerable belly in a gesture of trust that made Kira's throat tight with unshed tears. She pressed her palm flat against its chest, feeling the strong heartbeat beneath fur and skin, steady and sure, alive because she had refused to let it die. "You need to leave here," she told it seriously. "Once I am gone, you need to go far away from Crescent Moon territory. Alpha Catherine has patrols that run these borders, and if they find you, they will kill you. You are too strong, too dangerous, a rogue wolf that could threaten her authority. Promise me. You will leave. Promise me you will survive." Silver eyes stared up at her, unblinking, and she knew with absolute certainty that the wolf understood every word. How that was possible she could not explain, would not even try to explain if asked. But the knowledge settled in her bones like truth carved in stone. This was no ordinary wolf. Perhaps it had never been. On the morning of her departure, Kira woke before dawn and made one final trip to the den. She carried a haunch of venison she had managed to steal from the packhouse kitchens, enough meat to last the wolf several days, and a small cloth bundle containing the only thing of value she owned, a silver pendant her grandmother had given her before dying, a simple moon and star design on a delicate chain. "I do not know why I am leaving this with you," she said, placing both offerings inside the den where the wolf still slept, its breathing deep and even. "I do not know if you will even understand what it means, but it is yours. Now, something to remember me by, I suppose, though you will probably forget I existed by next full moon." She turned to leave, but a sound stopped her, a whimper so heart-wrenching, so full of distress that she spun back around. The wolf was awake, on its feet, staring at her with those impossible silver eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. It took a step toward her, then another, closing the distance between them until its muzzle touched her hand. "I have to go," Kira whispered, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. "I have to go, and you have to leave. We both have to survive whatever comes next." The wolf pressed its head against her stomach, its entire body trembling, and Kira broke, wrapping her arms around its neck and burying her face in its fur, breathing in its scent one last time, cedar and moonlight and wild freedom. "Thank you," she said into its fur. "Thank you for letting me help you. Thank you for making me feel like I mattered, even if it was just to one wolf in all the world." The journey to the capital took 3 days by carriage, 3 days of sitting in uncomfortable silence with the other servants, while the ranked females rode in cushioned luxury ahead of them, their laughter and excited chatter drifting back on the wind. Beta Marcus's new mate, a beautiful blonde named Celeste from a neighboring pack, kept shooting Kira pitying looks that made her skin crawl. At least the other females ignored her completely, which was preferable to false sympathy. When they finally arrived at the royal city, Kira pressed her face to the carriage window and forgot to breathe. The capital was massive beyond imagining, sprawling across the valley like a living thing, all gleaming white stone and soaring towers and banners snapping in the wind, the crimson and gold of the royal house visible everywhere. The palace itself dominated the landscape, built into the mountainside, part fortress and part work of art, its spires reaching toward the sky as if trying to touch the heavens. Power radiated from those walls, ancient and absolute, and Kira felt it in her bones, a pressure that made her want to bow even from a distance. They were ushered through servant entrances and shown to cramped quarters in the palace's lower levels, practical rooms with narrow beds and little else. The head housekeeper, a stern woman named Agatha, with iron-gray hair and no patience for questions, explained their duties in clipped sentences. You will serve during the ceremony. You will be silent unless spoken to. You will be invisible. The Alpha King does not tolerate incompetence or disrespect. Cross him, and you will wish you had never been born. Am I clear? 20 terrified servants nodded in unison. Kira spent the next 2 days in a fog of preparation, learning the palace layout, memorizing faces and ranks, polishing silver and arranging flowers and doing 100 small tasks that kept her hands busy while her mind wandered to a den in a forbidden forest and a wolf with silver eyes that had whimpered when she left. She wondered if it had eaten the venison. She wondered if it had left like she begged it to. She wondered if she would ever stop wondering. The night before the ceremony, Kira could not sleep. Restless energy drove her from her bed and through the silent palace corridors, her bare feet making no sound on cold stone floors. She was not supposed to be wandering. Servants were expected to stay in their designated areas, but the walls of her small room felt suffocating, pressing in until she could not breathe. She found herself in the palace gardens, a sprawling maze of cultivated beauty even in late autumn, and stood beneath an ancient oak tree, staring up at the full moon hanging heavy and silver in the sky. I miss you, she whispered to the night, to the moon, to a wolf that could not possibly hear her. I miss you, and I do not even know why. I do not even know what you were. A sound behind her made her spin, her heart leaping into her throat. A man stood at the garden's edge, partially hidden in shadow, and for a moment she could not process what she was seeing. He was tall, powerfully built in a way that spoke of deadly strength barely contained, dressed in simple dark clothing that did nothing to diminish the authority that rolled off him in waves. His hair was black as midnight, falling to his shoulders, and his face was all sharp angles and hard lines. Beautiful. In a brutal, unforgiving way. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Silver. Impossible. Luminous silver that caught the moonlight and threw it back. Eyes she had seen before. Eyes that had watched her with pain and trust, and something deeper than either. You should not be here, he said, his voice rough, unused, scraping against her senses like claws on stone. The same words. The exact same words she had said to the wolf that first night. Coincidence. It had to be coincidence. Kira's mouth opened, but no words emerged. The man took a step forward, into the moonlight, and she saw his face clearly for the first time. Harsh, remote, with the kind of cold perfection that made him seem more statue than man. This had to be him. Alpha King Dominic Ashford. She had never seen him, had only heard descriptions. But who else could move through these gardens with such ownership, such absolute command of every space he occupied? She should curtsy. She should apologize. She should do any of 100 things appropriate for a lowly Omega servant caught trespassing in the royal gardens at midnight. Instead, she heard herself say, "Neither should you. It is late. You should be resting before tomorrow." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, quickly masked. He moved closer, drawn by something neither of them could name, until only a few feet separated them. This close, Kira could see the tension in his frame, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, the muscle jumping in his jaw as if he was fighting some internal battle. "You smell like cedar and moonlight," he said abruptly, the words seeming to escape against his will. How is that possible? What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Kira's breath caught. Cedar and moonlight. The wolf's scent. The scent that had clung to her fingers, her clothes, her skin for 2 weeks. I do not know what you mean, Your Majesty, she managed, her voice barely. Steady. His eyes narrowed, studying her with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare, every secret exposed. You have been in the wild lands, recently. There is forest on you, deep forest, the kind that grows past human boundaries. It was not a question. I found an injured wolf, Kira said, the truth spilling out before she could stop it, before she could think about consequences or wisdom. I helped it, that is all. Dominic went very still, predator still, the kind of stillness that came before violence. You helped a wolf, a wild wolf, in forbidden territory. He took another step closer, close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to see the fine scars that marked his throat, old wounds that looked like they should have killed him. Yes, she whispered. It was dying. I could not just leave it. You should have. His voice had gone rough, dangerous. But his eyes, those silver eyes that could not possibly be coincidence, never left hers. Wild wolves are dangerous. It could have killed you. It did not kill me. It trusted me. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning she did not fully understand. Dominic's hand lifted, as if he meant to touch her face, but stopped inches away, trembling slightly, fighting something. What is your name? Kira. Kira Thorne, from Crescent Moonpack. Kira. He said her name like a prayer, like a curse, like something holy and profane all at once. You should not be here. Exist. This is not possible. Before she could respond, before she could even begin to process that strange statement, a door burst open across the garden and voices spilled out, loud and intrusive, shattering the moment. Dominic stepped back as if burned, his face shuddering into cold remoteness so complete she might have imagined the vulnerability she had glimpsed seconds before. Return to your quarters, he ordered, the Alpha King once more, all traces of that strange intensity gone. The ceremony begins at sunset tomorrow. Be ready. He turned and strode away into the darkness, leaving Kira standing alone beneath the oak tree, her heart racing, her mind spinning with impossible thoughts. Silver eyes, cedar and moonlight. It could not be, could not possibly be. But deep down, in a place beyond logic or reason, she knew. The wolf and the king were connected somehow, pieces of the same impossible puzzle, and she was caught between them. The grand hall of the royal palace was a masterpiece of architectural intimidation, designed to make anyone who entered feel small and insignificant beneath its soaring vaulted ceilings and massive stone pillars carved with the history of the kingdom. Hundreds of candles blazed in crystal chandeliers, their light reflecting off polished marble floors and walls hung with ancient tapestries depicting legendary battles and the great alphas of old. The scent of roses and expensive perfume filled the air, cloying and overwhelming, masking the undercurrent of nervous sweat and competitive tension that radiated from every unmated female packed into the space. Kira stood against the back wall with the other servants, invisible in her simple gray dress, holding a tray of crystal wine glasses that grew heavier with each passing minute. From her position, she had a clear view of the raised dais at the hall's far end, where an ornate throne of dark wood and silver sat empty, waiting for its occupant. The crowd buzzed with barely suppressed energy, conversations rising and falling like waves, speculation about the king's preferences, about who he might choose, about what qualities he valued in a queen. I heard he has not bedded a female in 5 years, a woman near Kira whispered to her companion, loud enough to be easily overheard. Not since the incident that killed his last intended mate. They say he is cursed, that any woman who gets close to him meets a terrible fate. I heard he cannot shift properly. Another, voice chimed in. That something went wrong during his challenge for the throne and now his wolf is unstable, dangerous even to him. The speculation continued, wild and unfounded, but Kira barely heard it. Her attention was fixed on the dais, on the throne that seemed to emanate cold power even empty, and on her memories of the previous night. The way the king had looked at her, the way his eyes had reflected the moonlight exactly like the wolf's, the way he had said her name as if it meant something profound, something world-changing. A trumpet blast cut through the noise, 3 sharp notes that brought instant silence. The massive doors at the hall's far end swung open, and Alpha King Dominic Ashford entered, flanked by his personal guard, 12 massive warriors in the crimson and gold of the royal house, each one deadly enough to take down a small pack single-handedly. But they might as well have been invisible for all the attention anyone paid them. Every eye in the hall locked. Onto the king, tracking his progress as he strode toward the dais with predatory grace, his presence filling the space, dominating it without effort. He wore formal attire, black pants, and a deep crimson shirt, under a long coat embroidered with gold thread. Clothes that should have softened his harsh features, but somehow only emphasized the brutal strength in every line of his body. His hair was pulled back from his face, revealing the sharp cheekbones and strong jaw that made him look carved. From stone rather than born from flesh, but it was his eyes that drew Kira's attention, held it captive, refused to release it. Silver, luminous and utterly cold, scanning the crowd with detached assessment, seeing everything and caring for nothing. This was Alpha King Dominic Ashford in his element, remote and unreachable, a force of nature wearing human skin. He ascended the dais and turned to face the assembly, his gaze sweeping across hundreds of hopeful faces, lingering on none of them. When he spoke, his voice carried effortlessly through the hall, deep and commanding, brooking no argument. The unification ceremony exists to strengthen bonds between packs, to create alliances that will ensure our kingdom's prosperity and security. I have no mate. I require one. You are here because your alphas believe you might be suitable. Blunt. Clinical. As if discussing a business transaction, rather than choosing a life partner. Kira saw several females flinch at his tone. They're romantic. Fantasies crashing against the reality of the man before them. The process is simple. Dominic continued, his eyes still scanning, searching, though for what remained unclear. You will be presented. You will state your name and pack. If I sense potential compatibility, I will call you forward for further assessment. If not, you will return to your place. At the ceremony's end, I will announce my choice. The selected female will become Queen Luna and my bonded mate. There will be no courtship. Period. No extended engagement. The claiming will occur during the full moon ritual in 3 days. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, excitement and fear in equal measure. The presentations began, each female stepping forward when her name was called. Dressed in their finest gowns, jewels glittering at their throats and wrists, beauty and breeding on display. Some were confident, holding the king's gaze with bold challenge. Others were demure, eyes downcast, playing to traditional preferences. All were stunning, selected from the best bloodlines in the 4 kingdoms, educated and accomplished, and exactly the type of female an alpha king should choose. Dominic rejected them all. One after another, he listened to their names with that same cold detachment, watched them with eyes that gave nothing away, and dismissed them with a curt nod and single word. Next. Hours passed. The pile of rejected candidates grew. Tension in the hall shifted from anticipation to confusion to barely concealed panic. What was he looking for? What standards could possibly be so high that not one of these exceptional females met them? Kira's arms ached from holding her tray. Her feet throbbed from standing motionless for so long, but she barely noticed. Her attention remained fixed on the king, on the way his jaw tightened incrementally with each dismissal. on the frustration that flickered in his eyes so briefly she might have imagined it. He was searching for something specific. Someone. Specific. But who? The answer hit her with the force of a physical blow. He was searching for the scent he had noticed in the garden. Cedar and moonlight. The scent of the wild lands, of forbidden places, of a wolf that should not exist. He was searching for her. The realization made her hands tremble, made the glasses on her tray clink together softly. A small sound that should have been swallowed by the noise in the hall. Somehow, impossibly, Dominic's head turned, his gaze locking onto her. Positioned against the back wall with laser focus. Their eyes met across the crowded space, silver on brown, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. Recognition flared in his face, followed immediately by confusion, by something that looked almost like fear. Before either of them could react, before Kira could even process what was happening, the massive doors at the hall's entrance exploded inward with a crash that made everyone scream. Chaos erupted instantly. Through the shattered doorway charged a wolf, massive and gray and covered in half-healed scars, its lips pulled back from teeth that gleamed in the candlelight, its eyes wild with single-minded purpose. Guards rushed forward to intercept it, but the wolf was faster, stronger, more desperate than anything they had encountered. It tore through them like they were made of paper, claws and teeth finding flesh with surgical precision, leaving wounded warriors in its wake, but not stopping, never stopping, focused entirely on reaching something, someone, at the hall's far end. Screams filled the air. Females scattered in all directions, their beautiful gowns trampling underfoot as they fled from the rampaging creature. More guards converged, trying to corner the wolf, to bring it down before it could reach the crowd of candidates now pressed against the walls in terror. The wolf ignored them all, its silver eyes scanning, searching, finding Kira. It charged toward her with single-minded intensity, and Kira's tray fell from her nerveless fingers, crystal shattering on marble in an explosion of glittering shards and red wine that looked like blood. She should run. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to get away from the massive predator bearing down on her with lethal speed. But those eyes. She knew those eyes. No, she breathed, taking a step forward instead of back, her hand lifting automatically. No, you were supposed to leave. You were supposed to be safe. The wolf reached her, skidding to a halt mere inches away, its breath hot on her face, its entire body vibrating with intensity. Guards surrounded them, weapons drawn, ready to strike, but hesitating because the wolf was so close to Kira that any attack would likely hit her as well. "Stand down!" someone shouted. "Get her away from it!" But Kira was not listening. Her hand touched the wolf's muzzle, fingers sliding through familiar fur, and the creature made a sound, a whimper of such profound relief and anguish that it broke something in her chest. "I know," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I know. I'm here. I'm safe. You found me. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on." The wolf pressed against her, nearly knocking her over with its weight, its nose buried in her hair, breathing in her scent, as if it had been drowning and she was air. Around them, the hall had gone silent, every person frozen in shock at the impossible scene. A wild, dangerous wolf that had just injured half a dozen royal guards was now docile as a puppy in the arms of a servant girl who should have been torn apart by now. "What is the meaning of this?" Alpha Catherine's voice cut through the silence, sharp with outrage and fear. "That creature attacked my guards. Someone kill it before it murders us all." Kira's arms tightened around the wolf protectively, her body positioning itself between the creature and the approaching warriors. "No," she said, her voice stronger now, carrying authority she had never possessed before. "No, you will not touch him. He is not here to hurt anyone. He is looking for me. Only me. You? Catherine laughed, the sound ugly with disbelief. Why would a wild wolf be looking for you? What have you done, you foolish girl? What forbidden magic have you been practicing? Before Kira could answer, before the guards could advance, a voice rang out across the hall, cold and absolute with command. Everyone stop. Now. Alpha King. Dominic Ashford stood at the edge of the dais, his entire body rigid, his silver eyes fixed on the wolf wrapped around Kira, with an expression of such complex emotion that it defied description. Horror, recognition, understanding dawning like a brutal sunrise. He descended from the dais slowly, each step measured, careful, as if approaching something that might shatter at any sudden movement. The crowd parted before him, creating a clear path to where Kira stood with the wolf. When he was close enough to touch, close enough for Kira to see the fine tremor running through his frame, Dominic stopped. It cannot be, he said, his voice rough with something between wonder and devastation. It cannot possibly be. I would have known. I would have sensed it. The wolf's head lifted from Kira's shoulder, turning toward the king, and Kira felt the exact moment the creature's attention shifted. Its entire body went still, then began to tremble, a high-pitched whine building in its throat. Not aggression, not fear, something else entirely. Recognition, the same recognition she saw in Dominic's eyes. You, the king breathed, taking another step closer, his hand lifting as if pulled by invisible strings. You are mine, part of me. How is this possible? His fingers touched the wolf's fur, and the reaction was instantaneous. The massive creature collapsed, its legs giving out, its whimpers turning into sounds of such desperate, aching need that Kira felt tears stream down. Her face. The wolf pressed against Dominic's hand, pushed into his touch with the same trust, the same relief it had shown when Kira found it dying in the forest. I do not understand, Kira managed, her voice breaking. What is happening? What is he? Dominic's eyes met hers, and in their silver depths she saw pain beyond measure, secrets that had carved wounds deep into his soul. He is me, the king said simply. My wolf, my beast, the part of me that was ripped away 5 years ago by a curse. I have spent every moment since trying to break. I have been searching for him, for this missing piece of myself, and he has been lost, wandering, incomplete. Until you. His hand moved to cup her face, his touch burning like brand. Until you found him, saved him, showed him the kindness and care that called him back from the edge of madness. You bonded with my wolf, Kira Thorne. You bonded with the part of me I thought was gone forever. The implications crashed over her like a wave. The mate. Bond. True mates recognized each other's wolves before anything else, the beasts knowing before the human halves ever suspected. She had bonded with his wolf, cared for it, loved it even, and in doing so had tied herself to Dominic in ways that could not be undone, would not be severed even if they wanted to, which explained why the wolf had crossed an entire kingdom to find her, why it had torn through guards and walls and every obstacle between them. It was not just seeking her. It was trying to reunite with its human half, and she was the bridge between them, the one who had touched both pieces of a fractured soul. The curse, Dominic said, his voice gaining strength, certainty bleeding through the shock. The witch who cast it said only my true mate could reunite us, that the bond between destined mates would be strong enough to overcome the separation magic. I have been looking for her for 5 years. Every unmated female in the kingdom has been tested, assessed, found wanting, because none of them were you. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, catching tears. An omega without a wolf. A servant from a minor pack. The last person anyone would expect. The only person who could save me. The hall erupted into chaos. Voices raised in protest and confusion and disbelief. Alpha Catherine pushed forward, her face twisted with outrage. "Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. This girl is nobody, a defect who cannot even shift. She is not fit to be Queen Luna. She has no bloodline, no training, no power." Dominic's head turned toward Catherine, and the look in his eyes made the Alpha take an involuntary step back. "She has everything that matters. She has my wolf's trust and love. She has shown more courage and compassion than every ranked female in this hall combined. She will be my queen, my mate, my Luna. This is not a request or a debate. It is fact." His attention returned to Kira, his expression softening in ways that transformed his harsh features into something almost gentle. "If you will have me, if you can accept a male who is broken, who has been separated from half his soul, who has done terrible things in his desperate search for wholeness, I offer you everything I am, everything I have, incomplete as it may be." Kira looked down at the wolf still pressed against both of them, at the creature who had trusted her in a dark den when trust should have been impossible, who had crossed a kingdom to find her again. She looked up at the king, who wore his authority like armor, but whose eyes held vulnerability so profound it made her ache. Two halves of the same impossible whole, and somehow, impossibly, she had become the thread that could weave them back together. "Yes," she said, the word emerging strong and clear despite her tears. "Yes, I will have you. Both of you. All of you." The relief that washed across Dominic's face was stunning in its intensity. He pulled her close, one arm around her waist and the other still touching. The wolf, completing a circuit that made power hum through the air, made the candles flare brighter, made every wolf in the hall feel the snap of something enormous clicking into place. The king bent his head, his lips brushing against her forehead, her temple, her cheek, claiming her with touches soft as feathers and binding as steel. "The ceremony will proceed," he announced, his voice carrying across the hall with renewed strength. "But not as planned. Kira Thorne of Crescent Moonpack will become my Queen Luna. The claiming ritual will happen tonight, during the full moon, with my wolf whole and my soul complete for the first time in 5 years. Any who object may challenge me for the throne. Any who accept may witness the beginning of a new era." The full moon ritual took place in the ancient stone circle on the palace grounds, a sacred space where wolves had gathered for centuries to honor the moon goddess and celebrate the bonds that held their society together. Kira stood at the circle's center, dressed in traditional Luna white, a gown of flowing silk that caught the moonlight and made her seem to glow from within. Around her neck hung her grandmother's pendant, returned to her by the wolf who had kept it safe all this time, and on her head rested a circlet of silver oak leaves, delicate and beautiful, and marking her as the king's chosen. Dominic stood before her wearing nothing but ritual pants, his chest bare, displaying the scars that marked his body like a map of every battle he had ever fought. The wolf sat beside him, massive and alert, no longer separate, but not yet reunited, waiting for the final piece of magic that would make them whole. The entire court surrounded them, witnesses to something that had not happened in living memory, the healing of a curse through true mate bond. Elder Vera, the ancient priestess who had guided the royal family for generations, raised her staff toward the moon and began to chant in the old language, words of power and binding that made the air shimmer with energy. "Kira Thorne," Vera intoned, her voice carrying despite her frail appearance. "Do you accept this male as your mate, knowing that in doing so you will be bound to him in body, mind, and soul? That his pain will become yours, his burdens yours to share, his life intertwined with yours until death parts you?" "I accept," Kira said clearly, her eyes never leaving Dominic's face. "Dominic Ashford, Alpha King of the 4 Kingdoms, do you accept this? Female as your mate, knowing that in doing so you pledge to protect her, honor her, Cherish her above all others? That her happiness will become your priority, her safety your responsibility, her love your salvation. I accept, Dominic replied, his voice rough with emotion. Then let the claiming begin. Dominic moved forward, closing the small distance between them, his hands coming up to cup her face with reverent gentleness. I am going to mark you now, he said softly, for her ears only. It will hurt, but only for a moment, and then you will feel everything. Our bond, my wolf, the completion of what has been broken. Are you ready? Kira nodded, tilting her head to expose her throat in the traditional gesture of submission and trust. Dominic's eyes flared bright silver, his canines lengthening, and he bent his head to her neck. The bite, when it came, was sharp and clean, his teeth sinking into the sensitive juncture between neck and shoulder, marking her as his for all the world to see. Pain blazed through her nervous system, white-hot and all-consuming, but it lasted only seconds before transforming into something else entirely. Pleasure. Connection. A bond snapping into place with such force that it drove the breath from her lungs and made her knees buckle. Dominic caught her, holding her against his chest as the mark burned and sealed, magic and biology intertwining to create something permanent and unbreakable. Through the bond, suddenly wide open and overwhelming, Kira felt everything. His love, fierce and all-consuming, that had begun the moment his wolf first smelled her in the garden. His pain, 5 years of incompleteness and desperate searching that had nearly driven him mad. His relief, so profound it brought tears to his eyes, at finally finding the one who could make him whole. His determination to protect her, to give her everything she had been denied her entire life, to make her see herself as he saw her, beautiful and strong and perfect, exactly as she was. And beneath it all, prowling at the edges of his consciousness, she felt the wolf. Her wolf now too, bound to her through care and blood and choice. It pushed forward, demanding acknowledgement, demanding reunion, no longer content to remain separate from its human half. Dominic gasped, his body going rigid, and the wolf beside them began to glow with ethereal light, its form becoming translucent, shimmering like moonlight on water. It is happening, Elder Vera breathed, wonder in her ancient voice. The curse is breaking. The wolf dissolved into pure light, streams of silver energy that flowed toward Dominic like water finding its level, entering his body through every pore, reuniting with the human half it had been severed from. Dominic threw his head back, a sound ripping from his throat that was part roar, part howl, pure anguished joy. His body convulsed, muscles rippling beneath skin, his eyes blazing with power that had been dormant for 5 years. When he looked down at Kira again, she saw the difference immediately. He was complete, whole. The emptiness she had sensed in him, even without knowing what it was, had vanished, filled by the return of his wolf and the bond with his mate. "Thank you," he whispered, pulling her close and pressing his forehead to hers. "Thank you for saving us, for seeing what no one else could see, for loving the beast when you did not know it was me." Kira smiled through her tears, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. "I would have loved you either way, in any form, broken or whole. That is what mates do." Around them, the court erupted into celebration, howls rising toward the moon in a symphony of joy and acknowledgement. Alpha Catherine, her face tight with barely concealed fury at having her most promising candidate stolen by a wolfless Omega, nevertheless bent her knee in grudging respect. The other alphas followed suit, recognizing the truth that could not be denied. Kira Thorne, the invisible girl who had never mattered to anyone, was now Queen Luna, bonded to the most powerful alpha in living memory, the one who had healed what everyone else thought broken beyond repair. Dominic lifted her into his arms, holding her close as his power, now fully restored, radiated outward in waves that made every wolf present feel the strength of their bond. "You will never be invisible again," he promised, his lips brushing against hers in a kiss that sealed the claiming, that completed the ritual, that began their life together. "You will never wonder if you matter. You are my queen, my mate, my everything. And I will spend every day of our lives making sure you know it. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? The days following the claiming were a whirlwind of adjustment, ceremony, and revelation. Kira found herself thrust into a world she had never imagined inhabiting, surrounded by advisors and courtiers who treated her with careful respect that could not quite hide their uncertainty about this unprecedented Queen Luna. But Dominic remained her constant anchor, his presence both protective and encouraging as she navigated the complex politics of ruling beside him. He was different now, transformed by the return of his wolf in ways both subtle and profound. The cold remoteness that had defined him for 5 years had thawed, revealing a male capable of deep feeling, fierce loyalty, and surprising gentleness with those he cared for. With Kira especially, he was attentive to the point of devotion, constantly checking through their bond to ensure she was comfortable, happy, adjusting to her new role. He introduced her to his inner circle, the trusted few who had stood by him through his darkest years. His beta, a scarred warrior named Marcus, who had been searching for the lost wolf alongside his king, welcomed Kira with genuine warmth and gratitude for healing his alpha. His advisor, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa, assessed Kira with careful intelligence before declaring her exactly what the kingdom needed, someone who understood vulnerability and would rule with compassion tempered by hard-won strength. But the greatest revelation came 3 weeks after the claiming, when Elder Vera requested a private audience with the king and his new queen. They met in the palace temple, a quiet space lit by candles and moonlight streaming through tall windows. The Wayne, old priestess, studied Kira with eyes that seemed to see past flesh and bone into something deeper. "I need to tell you something about the curse," Vera said without preamble. "Something Dominic does not know. Something the witch who cast it revealed only to me before she died." Dominic tensed, his hand tightening on Kira's. "What else is there?" "The curse is broken. My wolf has returned." "The curse was not random cruelty," Vera explained, her weathered face grave. "It was designed with a specific purpose, cast by a seer witch who saw a future where the Alpha King's power would be needed to stop a great darkness, but who also saw that this power could only be fully realized through true mate bond with a specific female. You, Kira." Kira felt her breath catch. "What do you mean?" "The witch separated Dominic's wolf and sent it wandering, knowing it would eventually find you. The one whose compassion and strength would be able to reach it when no one else could. She forced Dominic to search for 5 years, to understand what it meant to be broken, incomplete, vulnerable. She knew that only through this suffering would he become the king his people needed. And only through finding you would he gain access to the ancient power that sleeps in your bloodline." "My bloodline?" Kira's voice was barely a whisper. "I am nobody. An omega without a wolf." Vera smiled, sad and knowing. "You are the descendant of the first Luna, the moon goddess's chosen, whose line was thought extinct. Your inability to shift was not a defect, but a seal, protecting power that would not awaken until you bonded with your true mate. Now that you have claimed and been claimed by Dominic, that seal is broken. You have a wolf, Kira Thorne. She has simply been sleeping, waiting for this moment." The words barely registered before Kira felt it. A stirring deep within her consciousness, something uncurling like a flower opening to the sun. A presence that was hers and not hers, powerful and ancient and patient. Her wolf. Finally, after 23 years of emptiness. Her wolf. "Hello, little one," a voice purred in her mind, feminine and strong and infinitely kind. I have been waiting for you to be ready. Now we can begin." Tears streamed down Kira's face as she felt the full weight of what had just been revealed. She had a wolf. She was not defective, or broken, or less than. She was exactly what she was meant to be. And every moment of suffering, every humiliation, every lonely night had led her to this point, to Dominic, to her destiny as Queen Luna of the Four Kingdoms. Dominic pulled her close, his own emotions flooding through their bond, pride and love and fierce protectiveness. "You have always been extraordinary," he said against her hair. "Now the world will see what I have known from the moment my wolf looked into your eyes and recognized his salvation. You are power and compassion combined, strength tempered by kindness, everything a queen should be." That night, under the full moon, Kira shifted for the first time, her bones rearranging painlessly as magic older than the kingdom itself flowed through her veins. Her wolf was beautiful, white as snow with silver markings that seemed to glow with inner light. Smaller than the massive warriors, but carrying an presence that made every wolf who saw her instinctively bow. She ran through the forest with Dominic beside her, his wolf finally whole and complete. Two halves of a destined pair racing beneath. The moon they both served. Later, as they lay tangled together in the royal chambers, Dominic traced the mate mark on her neck with gentle fingers. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "About what happened 5 years ago. About why the witch cursed me." Kira waited, patient, giving him space to share in his own time. "I was arrogant," Dominic continued, his voice rough with old shame. "Cruel even, in my certainty that I needed no one. That strength came from isolation and absolute control. When the witch came to me seeking help for her village, I turned her away because aiding them would have cost resources I deemed better spent elsewhere. She cursed me, yes, but she also gave me a gift, though I could not see it then. She showed me what it meant to be broken, to be incomplete, to desperately need someone and not find them. She taught me humility and compassion through suffering. She prepared me for you. And now," Kira asked softly, her hand covering his, "now I understand that true strength comes not from isolation, but from connection. That power without compassion is tyranny. That a king is only as strong as his care for his people, and a male is only as complete as his bond with his mate. You have made me better in every way that matters, Kira. You have given me back not just my wolf, but my humanity." The kingdom flourished under their united rule. Kira's natural empathy and understanding of what it meant to be overlooked made her an advocate for those without voice or power, while Dominic's strength and strategic brilliance maintained the security and stability necessary for growth. Together, they were balanced, complete, everything their people needed. The other alphas, initially skeptical of the wolfless Omega who had become Queen Luna, quickly learned to respect her wisdom and the obvious devotion of their king. Even Alpha Catherine, after seeing how Kira's policies strengthened not just the royal pack, but all packs under its protection, eventually approached with a grudging apology and offer of alliance. Years later, when Kira stood on the palace balcony, watching her children play in the gardens below, their laughter bright as bells in the autumn air, she thought back to that night in the forbidden forest when she had found a dying wolf and chosen to save it rather than walk away. That single act of compassion had changed everything, had rewritten her destiny, and healed a king, and given her a life beyond anything she had ever dreamed possible. Dominic came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about, my love?" "About how strange life is," Kira replied, leaning back into his warmth. "How the moments that seem smallest, most insignificant, can actually be turning points we do not recognize until much later. How finding you, helping you, loving you, even when I did not understand what you were, was actually the most important thing I would ever do. The most important thing we would do," Dominic corrected gently. You saved me, but I like to think I saved you too. From a life of being invisible and undervalued. From never knowing your own worth. From believing the lies that your pack told you about your value. You did, Kira agreed, turning in his arms to face him. You saw me when no one else did. You made me matter. You gave me a place to belong. You always mattered, Dominic said fiercely, his hands cupping her face with that same reverent gentleness he had shown during their claiming. Long before I found you. Long before anyone recognized it. You always mattered. I am simply grateful I was the one who got to prove it to you. Below them, their children called out, demanding their parents join the game they had invented, some complex variation of tag that involved shifting and running and shrieks of delighted laughter. Kira smiled, that bright, genuine smile that had first appeared after their bond and had never faded, and took Dominic's hand. Come on, my king. Our children need us. They always do, Dominic agreed, but his tone held nothing but contentment. And I would not have it any other way. They descended together into the golden afternoon, the king and queen, who had been brought together by a curse designed to heal, whose bond had broken ancient magic and restored what was lost. Behind them, the palace stood strong and sure, a symbol of power tempered by compassion, of strength made complete by love. And in the forbidden forest where it all began, in a den that would eventually become a shrine for young wolves seeking courage, the air still carried the faint scent of cedar and moonlight, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin in the darkest places, with a simple choice to help rather than walk away, to love rather than fear, to believe that even broken things can be made whole again.